have a can of gel coat here. It is currently white, but my deck is not actually exactly white. So I have also a bunch of these colors, and the plan is to make the whole can of gel coat match the deck. And that is a very tedious process, but I have a section of clean gel coat that I'm going to use as a reference point, and basically mix in a little bit of color at a time to try to match that color. And once I have the entire can matching, I can go around the boat and fix all the little different spots that need to be fixed. So I'm up on the bow of Anticipation, and I've got a little problem area right here that I want to try to fix myself. This part is on the non-skid, this part is not, so it's a perfect test piece for what I want to try to do. I need to clear the gel coat off of this whole area. Then I'll re-fiberglass that little section there. I'm going to take a mold of the non-skid, probably from this area right here, and then translate that over to this section so that I can fill in that non-skid part. Some other spots I need to fix. There's little cracks and divots all over the deck, like that, little thin spots as well. On these corners here I have some cracking, and that's on most of the corners of the boat. So I'd like to get those cleaned up and filled with fresh gel coat, so hopefully they don't do that again. And full disclaimer, I am not an expert on any of this. I've been referencing other YouTubers who do this very successfully, and I'll be following the same methods as they do. So I've already cleaned this part of the hull. I'm going to use this as a reference for the color that I'm going to end up getting. In order to do that, I have a paper plate, a biodegradable spoon, and all my colors. So the plan is to spoon out a bunch of the white gel coat onto the plate, and then we'll slowly add color to make a palette of sorts that I can use as a color additive into the actual can. You don't want to go directly into the can with the color because this stuff is very powerful, and you can overshoot very easily if you do that. I'm going to start with my yellow color, because as far as I know, the gel coat is a little bit of a yellowish white. I think this one will give me the best result. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and put a little dollop of gel coat on there. So that is my base reference point. I know that I need to go a little bit more yellowy brown-ish. So I'm going to start with my yellow color. And, oops, that came out really fast. This is why we don't do it into the can directly. But that is okay. We can use this. So I'm just mixing in the yellow, and then from here I can take this little splotch of yellow and add it directly into the can and mix it in. So now all of my can is a little bit yellower than it was before. If yellower is a word. I'm making it a word today. So with that in the can, I'm going to go ahead and put that spot right underneath the one that I did before. So you see the difference here. We have a pure white versus slightly yellowed white, and it looks like it didn't do a very good job of mixing that in. So I'm going to mix a little bit more and try another spot. I'm not going to film every color combination I do, so we'll go into a time lapse right now. So, this is where we started with pure white. We then added some yellow and some brown, and eventually came around to this. This is the final color that I got, and here it is in the sun for comparison. It's pretty darn close. I pride myself on having good color vision, but I personally can't tell the difference between that and that. You know, it looks shiny obviously, but when you spread it in there, it blends right in with existing color, and I could probably spend hours looking at this and going mad, but I don't have that much sunlight left, so this is going to be it. I'm happy with it as is, and we'll be able to use this for projects. So now that we have some nice weather again, I'm going to actually go back and take a look at the gel coat. But the plan is I'm going to clear the gel coat out of all this area here, kind of get a look at what is going on underneath. If needed, I might have to cut out this section of deck and re-core it, which will be a good opportunity for me to practice that. Then I'm going to go back over it with more gel coat. I do have a mold of the non-skid pattern, so that when I get to this section, I'll actually be able to kind of integrate it back into the existing pattern here and not worry too much about that. But for now, I'm going to go get the Dremel and we're going to start grinding. So what I didn't really expect, but I'm glad I found in this area of the deck, is that the top coat of fiberglass is actually really thick. That's at least 1/4 of an inch of fiberglass on top of the coring, and what little core is actually exposed by that hole isn't actually rotted. So that is a good sign, but now it's obviously more exposed. I've gone ahead and cleared away a little bit more of the gel coat. I'm going to mix up a little bit of thickened epoxy, and we're going to fill in this void that I created and make it nice and faired to the rest of the deck. And if I have a nice weather window in the next few days, I'll come back over and do just a flat bit of gel coat on top. The epoxy that I used to fill in the void there has cured. I've also sanded and prepped the area. I prepped the area by wiping it down with acetone as well to remove any residue that might cause bonding issues between the old gel coat and the new gel coat that we're about to put on. I've measured out about 1 ounce of gel coat here. I'm going to add the liquid hardener as soon as we're ready. Basically, the plan is going to be to fill in this square with gel coat. I'd rather have it, go over the edge a little bit and overlap. Because it's easier to take that down than it is to, match perfectly within the lines. So let's go ahead and get into it. I'm going to add 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I think 10 drops is about the correct amount. We're going to stir that in. And if you want better tips on how to apply gel coat, Boatworks Today is how I've kind of learned how to do this. I'm not a pro like they are, so go check out their channel if you want more tips on how to do this better. But basically what I'm going to be doing is putting on very thin layers of gel coat and allowing a little bit of time between each layer for these layers to dry. I think that'll give us a nice smooth finish. I'm going to try to avoid any bubbles or anything like that, because those bubbles will come back to bite us when we get to sanding after the final coat. Now, the stuff in the cup isn't going to set up immediately, but this thin layer, it's going to start getting a little bit tacky. So I'm going to let it sit for a few minutes here and just enjoy the beautiful weather. Then once it has had some time to flash, I'll come back and brush it on by in the other direction here. I'm going to go ahead and start brushing on another layer here, going the other way. Okay. I think if we do 2 more layers, one this way and then one this way, we should have a good smooth finish, and we'll be able to move on to the final steps on gel coating. Okay, I think enough time has passed. I can go ahead and put another layer down. I know some people are very against sanding. However, I'd much rather sand than have a thin thin area that I have to come back later and fill in. So I'm not too worried about having thick areas or if there's a glob or anything like that. And here's the last bit. Okay. I'm going to come back in about 20 minutes and we'll pull the painter's tape up, and then we'll finish it off by putting some PVA on top of it. So I've got the sprayer here with the PVA in the jar. I'm going to spray a coat on top of the gel coat while it cures, and hopefully that should finish up. It takes a second for it to come out of the nozzle here, so you just got to hold it. There it goes. Alright. So we're going to leave that to sit for a few minutes, and we'll do one more layer on it. This stuff, it's basically wax that'll allow the gel coat to cure underneath it. This is a very important step for any non-wax gel coats, that you coat it in some sort of material. I've done it successfully with wax paper, but that can ruin your surface finish. And I kind of like how the spray ends up. Once it's dry, it'll actually form a layer that you can peel right off. We'll have to let it cure overnight. There's a chance of rain later, so I might actually go ahead and put some wax paper just loosely over it to make sure that the PVA stuff doesn't get washed away. It is something that'll come off with water, but we'll give it a couple hours to dry before then. Well, it rained really hard this morning, but that's okay because the gel coat had plenty of time to cure before the rain got here. That rain did wash away all the PVA from the gel coat, which saves me a step of cleaning it up. You can see the edge peeled away a little bit where we pulled up the painter's tape, and that's okay because next up we're going to be sanding it. I've got various degrees of sandpaper here, as well as a kind of flat block that I like to use for sanding. So for the edges that kind of got messed up, I'm actually going to take a very small piece of this very coarse 60 grit sandpaper. I'm going to try to get those removed, and then we'll focus on getting the more fine-tuned sanding in. But yeah, this is a lengthy process. A lot of people really hate it. I'm not against it, at least not that much. As I mentioned before, I'd rather take something off than have to come back and add more on later. But the process is basically going to be that I dry sand with this coarse stuff for a little bit to get the big bumps out. Once that is done, I'll run over it with the 125 grit just to get it a little bit more smooth, and then we'll switch to the 400 grit wet sanding, and then to finish it off I've got a strip of 600 grit that we'll use to make it nice and smooth. So now we've got a very smooth section of deck right here. It's actually smoother than some of the areas around it. But you can see the color is actually meshing in pretty well. I did take a little bit too much off on the edge here. The sandpaper was biting into the non-skid, but that's okay because we're going to be doing this adjacent section of non-skid, and I can just fix all of that in one go. But for now, I think I'm going to call this good. I'm not going to buff this yet. I'll do all of this together when we get to buffing and waxing as well. But for now, I think this part of the project is finito. Okay, I'm going to cut this video off here. I think we've filmed enough for one episode of this. I'll come back and do the non-skid section of the deck later, because that is a different process, and I think that deserves its own video entirely. That's going to be a really cool project, so make sure you stay tuned for that one. But for now, thank you for watching, and don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button if you enjoyed this, and I'll see you next time.